Frankenstein is one of the most beloved and cherished of all horror properties. From the original book to the various movie adaptations, or at least most of them, Frankenstein is absolutely nothing short of a legend. However, one name that was interested in telling his own version of the legend was one Guillermo Del Toro, who's a massive Frankenstein fanboy. So, what if Guillermo Del Toro directed Frankenstein? In 2007, Universal Studios were intending to do reboots of all of their classic Universal monsters. Now, whether this was supposed to be a cinematic universe or not is unknown, but it probably wasn't since the MCU didn't exist yet. One thing that was known for sure was that Guillermo Del Toro, the beloved director of several amazing creature features, such as the first two Hellboy movies, Pan's Labyrinth and The Shape of Water, was offered a place at Universal, overseeing various Universal monster movie reboots. Of the properties that Del Toro would have overseen, three that he was officially attached to were Van Helsing, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and most intriguingly, Frankenstein. Now I say intriguingly because Del Toro is a humongous Frankenstein fanboy. He even carries a giant Frankenstein's monster head in his personal gothic mansion. He's compared Frankenstein to religion, and said that while many young children discovered Christianity, he discovered Frankenstein, who became his own personal Jesus Christ. He said he was taken in by the novel's depiction of abandonment and having an existential crisis for literally being created with no true purpose in mind, besides just being made to begin with. And he was endeared to Frankenstein's monster because, well, when he goes out into the world, he experiences mostly hatred and fear, rage and pain. This depiction of a quote-unquote monster are what clearly inspired many of Del Toro's future works, where creatures are hated on and studied by mankind through their fear of the unknown. Del Toro has stated as well that he feels like no adaptation, including the iconic Boris Karloff one, which he's a massive fan of by the way, has ever been able to be the perfect adaptation of the original Mary Shelley novel, and for many years he's dreamt of making the definitive adaptation of Frankenstein. He wanted his version to be a little more disjointed, just like the book, regularly flipping back between the past and future, and really giving this world a sense of scale, with various side characters being used to set up this world, for Victor Frankenstein and his similarly reclusive creation to later interact with and be rejected and judged by. Del Toro's version seemingly would have starred his regular creature actor Doug Jones in the semi-eponymous role as Frankenstein's monster. He even reportedly went to Spectral Motion, a creature shop where Mike Elizad made a bust of Doug Jones as Frankenstein's monster that was apparently so hauntingly beautiful it actually made Doug cry. But his version would be much different to the one most people probably think of. Instead of the tall and beefy monster we got with Boris Karloff, he wanted his to be more, well, beautiful, like in the book. He wanted to model his creature off of Bernie Wrightson's drawings, a skinny, pale, long-haired creature that you almost want to pity instead of fear, but with a sense of unknown strength about him, untapped athletic prowess. Also, he would have actually been able to speak in this version, unlike the Boris Karloff one where he couldn't, and he actually would have learned to read and speak from reading a stack of books that was left abandoned in the middle of the woods. Now, Del Toro was incredibly ambitious with this. He didn't want to make just one Frankenstein movie. Oh no, he wanted to make at least three. Because you see, the original book has shifting perspectives, and he felt that if he were to stay true to the book, then he would need three movies at least to complete the full picture of all the characters besides just Victor and his monster. He even claimed that movies might not be good enough, and a TV show format or miniseries format might be needed to be done instead. Now, for Del Toro, this was probably the most important project of his entire career. He's claimed in interviews that he would have only done the movie if it was the only movie he was working on at the time. He insisted that he would need to 100% dedicate himself to its production, wanting to treat it with the focus and respect he feels it deserves. He said that he would need at least 3 years of just writing the Frankenstein movies. Unfortunately, anyone who's seen my previous Del Toro videos knows that Del Toro has never ever focused on one movie at a time. He's a born multitasker, and this was in the end the supposed reason why Frankenstein was never made. Del Toro ended up accepting the job of directing the Hobbit movies at New Line Cinema, which he knew would take up all of his time and make him unable to make the Frankenstein that he really wanted to make. After his Hobbit ultimately fell through, he was now freed up to undertake new projects once again, and he decided to go back to Universal in 2012 with new plans to make a Frankenstein movie. Not only were they more than willing to give him the director's chair, but they even hoped that he would oversee development of their entire Dark Universe slate, which of course would have included Frankenstein as well as Bride of Frankenstein. Because you see, Universal were desperate to play catch up to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, using their monsters in a continuous shared universe format, just like Marvel and DC were doing with their superheroes. And now, you might not believe what happens next, but Del Toro actually turned them down. Now, he's claimed in interviews that he was simply too afraid of the project, afraid that he would disappoint people, or even disappoint himself. Frankenstein is his absolute favorite book in history, so much so that he felt intimidated at the idea of directing it. He even said something really, really powerful about how he almost wants to keep it as a perfect dream, rather than make it because then he can't dream about it anymore. And he doesn't want to let that dream die. Doug Jones has also claimed that the Dark Universe probably had something to do with the project's cancellation, since Del Toro wouldn't have wanted to do a movie with recurring Easter eggs hinting at other properties, and would have wanted to just make his own standalone period piece that has nothing to do with a predetermined wider narrative. Although since Del Toro actually expressed regret over turning down the offer to oversee the Dark Universe, I'm not entirely sure that that's accurate. So now, did Guillermo Del Toro make the right decision turning down Universal? Honestly, no, in my opinion, not at all. Now, don't get me wrong, I completely understand why Del Toro didn't want to do it. I absolutely understand why he would want to keep it as this perfect dream. I really do respect and understand that. But honestly, despite that, Guillermo Del Toro, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna say it right here, is my absolute favorite movie director. There's a couple that come close, but Guillermo Del Toro is my absolute favorite. He's just a genuinely good human being, and all his movies have been excellent in my opinion. Even Mimic, with its studio interference, I thought was still a pretty good movie. I absolutely love Guillermo Del Toro as a person, and I love all of his works. And I just love how personally invested he gets in every one of his projects, even the ones he knows are probably not going to get made. And out of all of his projects, I honestly do think that this one sounds like the one he wanted to do the most. But he was also scared of it, and I think that's so interesting. But I think it's because he's scared of it that he would have been the best guy for the job, because he's such a massive fan of the book, but he's also such a fan of the previous movies, so he knows what works and what doesn't. And honestly, the version he wanted to tell with this more, eloquent and spoken Frankenstein's monster, this 3-movie narrative or TV show narrative, Doug Jones as Frankenstein's monster, all of it, it just sounds beautiful. It sounds like such a beautifully perfect adaptation. And I'm with him. I mean, the book is really different than all of the movies. I mean, even the Boris Karloff one, which I really like, it omits a lot of things. The North Pole is not featured in that movie at all. And Frankenstein's monster never stays at a farm, you know what I mean? So, a lot of things change in the movie, and I would have really liked to see a more novel, accurate adaptation. And if any guy could do it, obviously it would be my favorite movie director. This guy he understands how to make people like creatures, how to make people like monsters, quote unquote. I think that Guillermo del Toro would have been the most perfect guy to do a 21st century Frankenstein movie, or movies, or TV show, or miniseries, or whatever the hell it's going to be. And the thing is, Guillermo del Toro, he's only said no for now. He says that he might try to do this again in the future. If he's offered again, he might say yes, he said. So, maybe he'll do it. Maybe one day we will see this, and I'm praying we do. Because honestly, out of all the projects of his I've talked about so far, even Hellboy 3, even The Hobbit, even Beauty and the Beast, all these things I've talked about before, this is the movie that I wish had gotten made the most of his. This is just such a beautiful story, and Guillermo del Toro has so much passion for it. And honestly, I think that we can all agree that the Dark Universe would have been much, much better hands with Guillermo del Toro than Alex Kurtzman. I'm sorry, Alex Kurtzman fans, but he just wasn't right for The Mummy. Now, I know Guillermo del Toro didn't say he was going to do The Mummy, but let's be honest, I don't think The Mummy was the right movie to start the Dark Universe off with anyway. If I was to start off the Dark Universe, I would have done it the way they did it in the 30s. I would have started it off with Frankenstein. Or wait, was Dracula or Frankenstein? I don't remember. I think it was Frankenstein. If I'm wrong, you can type that in the comments, but I think it was Frankenstein. But even if it wasn't, I still think Frankenstein would have been the perfect movie to start the Dark Universe off with. And again, a Frankenstein Frankenstein movie directed by Guillermo Del Toro. It makes me weep about how good of an idea that is. As I said, I completely understand why Del Toro said no. And honestly, I think his reasoning behind saying no is honestly beautiful and just makes me like him even more as a human being. So if anything, I hope that my videos about him make you guys like him more as a person instead of just as a director. Because, seeing these interviews that he does and hearing about how much passion he has for all of his projects, whether they get made or not, it really humbles him. It really makes him such a likable man. And while, as I said, I absolutely understand why he doesn't want to do it and why he's a bit scared of doing it, I absolutely think he's perfect. And I think even if he does lose the dream, he will be extremely satisfied with his result, hopefully. I know I would be, and I know plenty of other people would be very, very happy to see this come to reality, because it really is, in my opinion, probably the biggest missed opportunity of his entire career. So anyway, guys, let me know in the comments down below. Am I overpraising Guillermo Del Toro's work? Am I overpraising the importance of the Frankenstein story? Let me know all that in the comments down below. Tell me if I'm right about Frankenstein or if it was Dracula that came first, because I'm blanking right now. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, share it with all of your friends on all your various social media platforms, and give me more what if recommendations in the comments down below. Whether it's more Guillermo Del Toro canceled movies, or whether it's about anything else you can think of, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see all of you in the next video.